Okay, next bullet point, discussion relative to the city council president hosting a citywide dialogue on civil rights. Jose, did you want to talk about that as well?
Absolutely. So I've given the board some highlights as to this. Basically, again, I've been in contact with the city council office quite a bit this summer. There's been a lot of questions about what's going on, what can we do, how can we improve the situation. One of those projects is amending the PERA statute, the PERA ordinance, to better reflect the needs that we have that we addressed in this meeting. And the other project that I'm working on with them is, at the invitation of the city council president, hosting was going to be a citywide virtual multi-part dialogue in hopes of getting, not just having what we would call a know your rights conversation, but getting into the specifics, a dialogue about power, if you will, right? So far, and I want to give you folks a little bit of an outline of what we're being planned in hopes that you guys can either give feedback or if you have different ideas, absolutely include them. But at the moment, we have at least 3 of the sessions planned. We're thinking about 90-minute windows. One of the sessions will be about the Fourth Amendment, specifically what does it mean from a legal context when we say a police officer stops somebody, right? It's not just what we think it means. It says, hey, you stop. They have to have a legal standard to do that and talk about when, where, and how. And what you'll see is a lot of times when you hear it from the civilian perspective as a person being stopped, and you hear it from the legal perspective or law enforcement perspective, you're going to have some different perspectives, which is what leads to sometimes confusion or some of the incidents that we see on the street that have to do with resisting arrest and that sort. So what is a stop? What is a search? When can the police do it? And the idea is that we'll have a couple of panelists, whether they be attorneys or otherwise. And the idea is not to have the panelists dominate the conversation. They're going to introduce themselves, maybe talk a little bit about their experience, and really invite the public, right? It's supposed to be a dialogue for the public to talk about their experience and ask questions of the panelists. And the hope from this being that from this conversation, we can either identify what are problem areas, right? Misunderstandings, whether it is that the police are interpreting the law in a way that's excessive or vice versa, and either use that to amend the laws in the city or educate the public, educate the police department, but basically improve the situation. Because as we've seen in some of the presentations made tonight and conversations we've had previously, a lot of these problems that we're seeing, whether it be in national news or here in Providence, really stem from these interactions that go awry. And so my thinking, and it seems like the city council office is thinking as well, if we can have an opportunity to bring these parties together, again, people from different perspectives, especially to talk about the legality of these things, I think it'll go a long way to a better understanding. So one is on the Fourth Amendment, right? Stops and searches and seizures. The second conversation is about Miranda rights. A lot of folks, we watch movies and we see how people are read. If you are arrested, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you, right? We know what Miranda rights are, but there are specifics, again, legally, about when they're supposed to be read and what can happen if they're not read and what's the remedy, right? Can the evidence be used against you, vice versa? And so that's another big topic that civilians often have questions on and they don't understand. And so just giving them the opportunity to have that conversation. And the third is about immigration. A big question that's arisen recently is, what is the role of local police when it comes to immigration? I know the PCPRA, the Providence Community Police Relations Act, says that Providence Police cannot collaborate with other law enforcement agencies, whether it be ICE or the feds in some other way. And so we know that that's the expectation of Providence. But, what is it that they are supposed to be asking? Can they ask you for your papers, if you will, right? So what's that dynamic between local police forces, which are not immigration officials, and civilians, right? So those are the 3 topics for now. I think, certainly open to expanding that. We're certainly thinking about folks to invite as panelists, and we're hoping to really promote this and have a good turnout. Again, it's an opportunity for the community to engage and have a conversation, learn more about this, and in hopes of reducing some of the confusion and animosity that creates from these situations, right? I mean, we saw it in some of the videos, right? When can a police officer push somebody, right? It's not just some unlimited thing that can happen whenever. Granted, there's policies and laws, but those can also change. And be updated. So that's a little bit about that. I think we're planning to start, at least if everything continues, we're planning to begin this series at the end of September. We're trying to work around, obviously, all the other meetings that the city's hosting. And it seems like they're going to be on Wednesday nights in 90-minute sections. And the other thing we're thinking about is also doing a parallel section in Spanish, right? So we might do one of the dialogues on one night and then do it another night in Spanish, just because there's such a significant population of Providence of folks who speak Spanish and not English. Mr. Vice Chair.
I guess Ms. Ray is having an issue with her audio. She wanted to know who else is going to be involved with this group, this panel discussion group.
So far, us, PERA, is working with the City Council office to sponsor it, if you will. I know it's both of our organizations. But in terms of speakers, I've been reaching out to folks in a variety of communities, right? The Attorney General's office, if there's prosecutors available. The Public Defender's office, if there's folks who are willing to participate. Also the private bar, right? We do, again, it's a community thing. We don't want the panelists to it's not about them. But to the extent that we can have people who do this for a living, who can speak about cases that they've had, or, actual laws that they interact with, right? What it's supposed to be, how it sometimes escalates. Like, we want to bring folks who have relevant experience who can speak to that. And so there's not any other particular group, organization that's associated with it besides PERA and the City Council office. Is just individuals who are willing to participate. And obviously the dialogue will be advertised and open to the public the same way that these meetings are.
I can reach out to someone I know. That's something believe it or not, I used to do with an individual who was chair of the I forgot the program, but he was the National Black Police Officers Association. But I can get with you about that offline. We used to have a whole thing, what do you do when you stop by the police, and it was a primer on different things to do, consider, things you can do to help protect yourself, so on and so forth. So,
if you're referring to Charles Wilson?
Yes, Charles. How is he, if you've seen him? I haven't talked to him in a while, but yeah, very good guy, and it was pretty informative situation, program.
Mr. I, you had your hand up?
It's around D, actually. But yes, so I just wanted to make sure that I understand where you're coming from when you say that you want to provide a dialogue for the community, for the folks who, they interact with these laws and these policies on a day-to-day basis, and they have the most experience with it. But I also want you to keep in mind to also think about including the folks who are on the ground, who were the reason that this was implemented. I would encourage you to reach out to the local organizers and the local community members to see if they're also willing to sit on this panel that you're talking about, because they know that language also like the back of their hand. They are the ones who created that language and sat down at the table to come up with it. So it would be in our best interest trying to create a space for the community to bring the community to the table, and not just these people who have fancy degrees.
That's a great point. I appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. And if I can be a pest, if you have any specific people or specific groups in mind, I'd love to follow up with you, maybe with an email. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just one quick question or a follow-up to that. If we're going to start doing this kind of thing, then are we moving from being a independent review organization to a direct activist organization? Are we becoming an activist organization? That's the question that I have.
I can give you my 2 cents. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. I just said that's kind of a good point there, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give you my 2 cents, and if there's anything we can do to shift away from anything that looks like an activist organization, that's fine. Obviously, I don't think we are an activist organization. I don't think we're trying to become one. Obviously, you want to be mindful of that, so that, because it's one thing what you intend, but it's another thing what it looks like. I get that. No, but there's, what we're trying to promote is understanding, right? We're not necessarily saying one thing over the other. I think it's healthy for people to understand. I would say right now it's pretty clear that there's a gap between what the law is and how it is enforced, and I think that's been true for a long time. And so whatever we can do to promote, community outreach, which is something that's in the statute, in a way that's productive and encourages dialogue, I think is a good thing. But if there are ways we can kind of safeguard ourselves so that we don't appear to be an activist organization, I think that it would be smart to do that too.
Well, that's the thing, because as you just stated, we're part of the ordinance is that we're supposed to be doing outreach. Now, what is that supposed to entail? Are we supposed to be educating people on their rights? Are we supposed to be educating people about PERA and PERA's existence? Are we supposed to be educating people on the authority that PERA has? What is the mandate in regards to that outreach? And how is that supposed to be put into the framework of PERA?
Susan?
I received an email today. I don't know if you know about this, Jose, but the Providence Human Relations Commission and the African American Advisory Group, Police Advisory Subgroup, is doing several presentations around, budget and use of force and and Leobor. I just don't want us to duplicate anything. Have they reached out to you at all about what they're doing?
Yeah, I haven't seen the email that you're talking about right now. I don't think I received it, but I am aware of that collaboration. I know that they were planning on doing something like that. I share your concern. I don't think we should be duplicating what they're doing. And so it's interesting, if they're talking about the subjects you just talked about, use of force and the budget, I think those things are different from what we're talking about, at least so far as the topics that I highlighted.
I mean, there's a few topics like SROs and different things like that. So